My wife texted, "I'm staying at my sister's tonight, don't wait up." So I didn't. Instead, I had dinner with her sister, who showed me 6 months of messages between my wife and her coworker. Let me back up. My name is Silas Kelran, and until yesterday, I thought I had a pretty decent life. Not great, not terrible, just decent. I'm 42, work in defense intelligence analysis, and live in a suburb outside Cleveland that's trying real hard to be nicer than it actually is. The kind of place where everyone mows their lawn on Saturday and pretends their marriages aren't slowly crumbling behind vinyl siding and storm doors. My wife Talia is 39, works in marketing for a tech firm downtown, and has been acting strange for about 6 months. Not strange like she started collecting garden gnomes or anything. Strange like she suddenly cared about her appearance again. New clothes, expensive perfume, gym memberships she actually used. The kind of changes that make a husband wonder if he's being paranoid or just finally paying attention. Talia's sister Mira lives about 20 minutes away in a converted warehouse apartment that costs more than our mortgage. She's a nurse practitioner, never married, and has always been the practical one between the two sisters. Where Talia is all ambition and sharp edges, Mira is steady and thoughtful. They look alike. Same dark hair, same green eyes, but Mira has this quality that makes you trust her immediately. So when Talia sent that text about staying at Mira's place, I figured it was just another one of their sister bonding sessions. They'd been doing it more frequently lately, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. Talia never voluntarily spent extra time with family unless she needed something. I was sitting in my home office, staring at a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in ancient Greek when my phone buzzed. Not Talia's usual goodnight text, but Mira asking if I wanted to grab dinner. Said she had something important to discuss. The restaurant Mira chose was one of those places that tries to be upscale but can't quite pull it off. Dark wood, dim lighting, servers who take themselves too seriously. Perfect for conversations you don't want overheard. She was already seated when I arrived, her phone face down on the table like a loaded weapon. "Silas," she said, standing to hug me. "Thanks for coming." "Everything okay? You sounded serious on the phone?" Mira gestured for me to sit. She looked tired, like she'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "I need to show you something. But first, I need you to know that I've been struggling with this for months. I kept hoping it would end on its own." That's when she slid her phone across the table. The screen showed a text conversation between Talia and someone named Aaron. The timestamp was from 3 hours ago, right around the time Talia texted me about staying at Mira's place. "Aaron, room 412. I'll be there by 9. Talia, perfect. Told S I'm at my sister's again. He never questions it. Aaron, your sister still covering for you? Talia, she doesn't know the details. Just thinks I need space sometimes. I looked up at Mira, who was staring at her water glass like it held the secrets of the universe. "How long?" I asked. 6 months, maybe longer. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I found out by accident. She left her phone here one night, and it kept buzzing. I thought it might be you, so I looked. Mira reached across the table and scrolled up through the messages. Months of conversations. Not just romantic nonsense. Detailed planning. Hotel reservations. Timing coordination. Even discussions about you-know-what protection and pregnancy scares. Everything time-stamped against Talia's lies to me about working late, business trips, and sister bonding time. "This Aaron guy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's the coworker she's mentioned?" "Aaron Price. He's in her department. Divorced, 2 kids, drives that ridiculous sports car she's always talking about." I kept scrolling. The messages revealed a pattern that made my stomach clench. Not passion, but procedure. Scheduled windows of opportunity. Discussion of burner apps and location spoofing. This wasn't some messy affair driven by emotion. It was operational. "Mira," I said slowly, "has Talia asked you any questions about my work?" Anything that seemed odd? She frowned. A few times. Asked if you ever brought files home, what kind of security clearance you have. I figured she was just making conversation. That's when the pieces started clicking into place. Aaron Price worked for Talia's company, which had defense contracts. My background in intelligence analysis meant I had access to certain databases and networks, my home office, my computer, my phone, all potential entry points for someone who knew what they were looking for. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest, I said. When Talia stays at your place, does she actually sleep there? Mira's face told me everything before she spoke. She shows up around 11, sometimes later. Says she needs to decompress, maybe watch a movie. Then she leaves early, usually before 6 in the morning. I assumed she wanted to get home before you woke up. But she never actually stays the night. No. And Silas, there's something else. Last month she asked me to take some photos of her. Said she wanted to update her professional headshots. But the clothes she brought, the way she wanted to pose, it wasn't professional. It was more like she was building some kind of profile. I handed the phone back to Mira and sat there for a moment, processing. My wife of 15 years wasn't just cheating on me. She was using me, using her sister, and potentially compromising national security in the process. The woman I'd shared a bed with, a mortgage, and dreams of growing old together had turned our entire marriage into an intelligence operation. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. Mira's eyes filled with tears she was trying hard not to shed. "Because I can't be part of this anymore. Because you deserve to know. And because I think she's planning something bigger." "What do you mean?" "Her Instagram posts lately. The way she talks about you when she thinks I'm not really listening. She's building a narrative, Silas, making you look controlling, emotionally distant, like she's setting up justification for leaving." I thought about Talia's recent social media activity, cryptic posts about finding herself and breaking free from toxic patterns, photos of herself looking contemplative and slightly sad, the kind of content that would make people ask questions and offer sympathy. "She's going to leave me," I said. "I think she already has. She's just waiting for the right moment to make it official." We sat in silence for a few minutes, while I tried to wrap my head around the magnitude of the betrayal. Not just the affair, but the systematic deception. The way she'd used her own sister as an unwitting accomplice. The potential security implications of bringing someone like Aaron into our home, our life. "What are you going to do?" Mira asked. I looked at her across the table. This woman who'd been carrying the weight of her sister's lies for months, who'd finally chosen loyalty to truth over loyalty to family. "I'm going to do what I was trained to do," I said. "I'm going to gather intelligence, assess the threat, and neutralize it." "Silas, not like that," I said quickly. "I mean legally, systematically. If Talia wants to play games with operational security and emotional manipulation, she's about to learn that some games have consequences she never considered." When I got home that night, the house felt different. Not empty, just exposed. Like someone had been going through my things while I was gone, which I realized they probably had been, for months. I went to my home office and started making notes. Times, dates, patterns, everything Mira had shown me, cross-referenced with my own observations. Talia's new clothes, her suddenly busy schedule, the way she'd been asking casual questions about my work. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I checked my home network logs. What I found made my hands shake with rage. Unauthorized access attempts, successful logins from devices I didn't recognize, data transfers during hours when I was at work. My own wife had turned my home into a compromised facility. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years. "Henderson. It's Kelran. I need to talk." Marcus Henderson had been my handler during my last assignment with the NSA. He was one of those guys who looked like an accountant but could probably eliminate a small country with nothing but a laptop and a grudge. We'd worked together for 3 years before I transitioned to private sector analysis, and he still owed me a favor from a situation in Prague that we'd both agreed never to discuss. Silas, it's been a while. What's the emergency? I think my home network has been compromised, potentially for months. There was a pause. In our line of work, that kind of statement gets attention fast. Personal or professional? Both. My wife's been having an affair with someone who works for Meridian Defense Systems. They have mid-level contracts with the Pentagon. How do you know? I explained about Mira, the messages, the timeline that matched every lie Talia had told me. Henderson listened without interrupting, which meant he was taking notes. You said network compromise. What kind of access? Someone's been logging into my home system during work hours. Data transfers, file access. I haven't done a full forensic analysis yet, but the logs show activity that corresponds with my wife's alleged sister visits, which were actually hotel meetings with the boyfriend. Correct. Another pause. Silas, I need you to listen carefully. Don't touch anything else on your network tonight. Don't confront your wife. Don't change any passwords or security settings. Can you be at the downtown Federal Building tomorrow morning at 8? Yes. Bring everything you have. Logs, messages, timeline documentation, and Silas? This conversation never happened. The line went quiet. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Talia, to scream at her, to demand explanations. But my training kicked in. When you discover you're compromised, you don't alert the opposition. You gather intelligence and plan your response. At 6:30 in the morning, I heard Talia's car in the driveway. She came through the front door like nothing had changed, carrying her overnight bag and wearing yesterday's clothes. Her hair was messy in a way that suggested she'd actually slept somewhere, and her makeup was smudged just enough to sell the story of a restless night at her sister's place. Morning, she said, heading straight for the coffee maker. How was your evening? Quiet. How's Mira? She's good. We talked until pretty late. You know how it is with sisters. I watched her pour coffee, add cream, stir it exactly 3 times like she always did. This woman who'd shared my bed for 15 years, who knew I liked my eggs over easy and that I couldn't sleep without a fan running, who'd apparently been systematically betraying me for months while maintaining this perfect facade of domestic normalcy. What did you talk about? Talia shrugged. Work stuff, family drama. She's thinking about dating again, wanted advice. The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I almost admired the craftsmanship. If I hadn't seen the messages, hadn't talked to Mira, I would have believed every word. I might be late tonight, she said, checking her phone. Big presentation tomorrow, need to prep with the team. Anyone I know? Just the usual suspects. Aaron's leading the technical side, so it'll probably run long. She said his name without a flicker of emotion, like he was just another colleague instead of the man she'd been meeting in hotel rooms for 6 months. The casual mention was probably calculated. Establish his presence in her work life as normal, unremarkable. Well, good luck with it. Talia kissed my cheek, the same perfunctory peck she'd been giving me for years. Then she headed upstairs to shower and change, leaving me alone with the knowledge that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a carefully constructed lie. At 8 o'clock sharp, I was sitting in a sterile conference room in the Federal Building, watching Henderson review the evidence I'd compiled. He'd brought 2 other people, a woman from cybersecurity and a man who introduced himself only as Davies and had the kind of handshake that suggested military background. This is extensive, the cybersecurity specialist said, looking at my network logs. Whoever did this knew what they were looking for. These aren't random phishing attempts. The boyfriend has clearance? Davies asked. Mid-level. Enough to know what questions to ask, not enough to access the really sensitive material directly. Henderson leaned back in his chair. So he uses the wife to get into your home network, hoping to find something useful. Classic honey trap operation, except instead of targeting you directly, they target your spouse. The question is whether this is freelance or sponsored, Davies said. Could be corporate espionage, could be foreign intelligence using local assets. I thought about Aaron Price, the man who'd been sleeping with my wife and potentially stealing government secrets through my home computer. What happens now? Now we investigate, Henderson said. Quietly, we'll put surveillance on Price, monitor his communications, see who else might be involved. In the meantime, you go home and act normal. For how long? However long it takes. Can you handle that? I thought about Talia, probably at work right now, maybe texting Aaron about their next hotel meeting, about Mira, who'd been carrying the weight of her sister's deception for months, about the systematic way my entire life had been turned into an intelligence operation without my knowledge. I can handle it. Good, because if this is what we think it is, we're going to need your help to build a case. And Silas? Your wife can't know. Not yet. I drove home in a daze, trying to process the morning's revelations. It was one thing to discover your spouse was cheating. It was another to learn that your marriage had become a national security issue. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia. Dinner with the team tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Okay. Love you too. The lies were so automatic now, so embedded in our daily routine, that we were both participating without even thinking about it. She lied about where she was going. I lied about not knowing the truth. We'd turned our marriage into a performance where neither of us was playing our real character. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I really looked at our house. Not just glanced around, but examined it like a crime scene. The home office where I worked, where sensitive documents sometimes ended up on my desk. The computer where I accessed classified databases. The bedroom where Talia and I slept, where she could watch me enter passwords, observe my security habits, ask casual questions about my work. Every room told a story of systematic compromise. The kitchen where she'd served coffee to Aaron during his brief stops to pick up work materials. The living room where they'd probably sat together, going through information she'd gathered. The garage where his ridiculous sports car had probably been parked while I was at work, hidden from the neighbors who might ask questions. My marriage hadn't just ended 6 months ago when Talia started her affair. It had been weaponized, turned into an intelligence operation where I was the unwitting target and she was the asset. The woman I'd trusted with everything, my heart, my home, my security clearance, had sold all of it for whatever Aaron Price was offering. But as I sat in my compromised home office, looking at the computer that had been secretly accessed dozens of times, I felt something unexpected. Not just anger or betrayal, but a cold, analytical clarity that I recognized from my intelligence days. Talia thought she was running an operation against me. What she didn't realize was that she'd just given me all the intelligence I needed to run a much better operation against her. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years, not because I was actually ill, but because I needed time to think, to plan, and to start building my own operation. If Talia wanted to play intelligence games, she was about to discover that some people are better at it than others. I started with the basics. A full inventory of what she knew, what she'd accessed, and what damage she might have caused. My home computer showed evidence of someone copying files, accessing my work email, and even attempting to crack encrypted folders. Whoever was directing this operation knew exactly what they were looking for. The personal betrayal stung, but the professional implications made me furious. I'd spent years building a reputation in the intelligence community, years earning the trust that came with high-level security clearances. Talia had put all of that at risk for her affair with a mid-level defense contractor who probably wasn't even the real target, just another asset being used by someone higher up the food chain. My phone rang. Henderson. We've been monitoring Price's communications since yesterday. You need to see this. 20 minutes later, I was back in the federal building, looking at transcripts of Aaron Price's phone calls and text messages. What I saw made my hands clench into fists. Talia. Package delivered successfully. S never suspected. Aaron. Excellent. The client is very pleased with the quality. Talia. When do we move to phase 2? Aaron. Soon. Need to establish more distance first. Your sister situation won't work much longer. Talia. I can handle my sister. She trusts me. Aaron. And your husband? Talia. He's clueless. Thinks I'm going through some kind of midlife crisis. I could probably walk out with his entire filing cabinet, and he'd assume I was redecorating. Henderson watched my face as I read. There's more. The next set of messages was from Aaron to someone identified only as client. Aaron. Asset remains unaware. Wife has provided access to home network, work schedule, and personal files. Subject maintains routine, no security awareness. Client. Timeline for extraction. Aaron. Recommend 6 weeks. Asset is becoming suspicious of wife's activities. Need to complete data harvest and establish distance before exposure. Client. Approved. Initiate relationship termination protocol. I looked up at Henderson. Relationship termination protocol? Keep reading. The final set of messages was from 3 days ago, right around the time Mira had decided to tell me the truth. Aaron. Wife is getting nervous. Sister asking questions. May need to accelerate timeline. Client. Acceptable. Initiate final phase. Make sure asset is discredited before extraction. Aaron. Understood. Wife will file domestic issues complaint next week. Establishes pattern of instability, protects operation if asset becomes problematic. Davies leaned forward. Your wife was planning to file a domestic violence complaint against you. False allegations designed to destroy your credibility and security clearance. The room spun for a moment. Not only had Talia been stealing from me for months, she'd been preparing to destroy my reputation and career as part of her exit strategy. The Instagram posts, the careful narrative building, the way she'd been asking Mira questions about my behavior, all of it designed to establish a foundation for claims that I was controlling, potentially dangerous. How long do we have? I asked. According to this timeline, she was supposed to file the complaint this week. But something's changed. Her communications with Price have dropped off significantly since your dinner with the sister. Mira told her I knew something. Possibly. Or they're switching to more secure communications. Either way, we need to move fast. Henderson pulled out a folder. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to go home and act normal while we build a case against the entire network. We've identified at least 3 other couples where similar operations might be running. This is bigger than just your marriage. What about Talia? What about her? When this comes out, when you arrest Price, and whoever's running this operation, she's going to be exposed too. She'll lose her job, her reputation, possibly face criminal charges. Davies studied my face. And that bothers you? I thought about it. 3 days ago, the idea of Talia facing serious consequences would have horrified me. Now, knowing what she'd planned to do to me, what she'd already done to our marriage and my career, I felt something different. No, I said. It doesn't bother me at all. Good, because we're going to need you to help us catch them in the act. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would continue my normal routine while federal investigators monitored all communications between Talia, Aaron, and their mysterious client. Meanwhile, I would start making subtle changes to my home security, my work habits, and my personal documentation, changes designed to protect myself while giving the operation enough rope to hang itself. The hardest part would be acting normal around Talia, kissing her goodnight while knowing she was planning to destroy my life, making small talk about her work while knowing she was stealing mine, pretending to trust her while documenting every lie she told. But I'd done harder things during my intelligence career. I'd maintained cover identities for months, built relationships with people I was investigating, smiled at enemies who would have eliminated me without hesitation if they'd known who I really was. This was just another operation, except this time the target was sleeping in my bed. When I got home that afternoon, Talia was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or calculation. Then her practiced smile returned. "You're home early. Feeling better?" "Much better. Just needed a day to recharge." She turned back to the stove, stirring something that smelled like the pasta sauce she'd been making for years. "Good. I was worried you might be getting sick." "Just work stress. You know how it is." "I do." She paused, then said casually, "Actually, I've been thinking we should take a vacation. Get away from everything for a while. Maybe that place in the mountains we talked about." I recognized the suggestion for what it was, an attempt to get me away from my support network, my work, my normal environment. Probably part of the preparation for whatever final phase Aaron had mentioned. "That sounds great," I said. "When were you thinking?" "Maybe next month? I could probably get some time off." "Let's plan on it." We ate dinner like a normal married couple, talking about work and weather and weekend plans. She told me about her presentation, how well it had gone, how pleased her boss was with the results. I told her about a project I was working on, carefully editing out any details that might be useful to her operation. After dinner, we watched television together on the couch. She curled up against me like she had for years, her head on my shoulder, her hand on my chest. To anyone watching, we would have looked like a couple comfortable with each other, settled into the easy intimacy of a long marriage. But I could feel the tension in her body, the way she kept checking her phone, the distraction behind her responses to my comments about the show we were watching. She was thinking about Aaron, about their operation, about the complaint she was supposed to file against me. "I love you," she said suddenly, looking up at me. "I love you too," I replied, and we both knew we were lying. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the woman I'd married 15 years ago. The ambitious, brilliant, beautiful woman who'd convinced me that we could build something lasting together. Had she always been capable of this level of betrayal, or had something changed? Had I missed warning signs, or had she simply become someone different? It didn't matter anymore. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by an intelligence asset who saw our marriage as nothing more than operational cover. The sooner I accepted that, the better I could focus on what needed to be done. Tomorrow, the real operation would begin. 3 days later, I was sitting in my office at work when Henderson called. "It's happening today. Price just received confirmation that your wife filed the domestic complaint this morning. They're accelerating the timeline." My stomach dropped. Despite knowing it was coming, despite preparing for it, the reality of Talia actually following through felt like a physical blow. "What kind of complaint?" "Emotional abuse, controlling behavior, threats of violence. She's claiming you've been monitoring her communications, isolating her from family and friends, and making threatening statements about what you'd do if she ever tried to leave." The irony was staggering. She was accusing me of the exact behavior she'd been engaging in for months, monitoring communications, manipulating family relationships, making plans to destroy my life if I became inconvenient. "How does this affect the operation?" "It actually helps us. She's just provided documentary evidence of her participation in a conspiracy to file false charges against a federal employee with security clearance. That's a felony." "When do you move?" "Tonight. Price has a meeting scheduled with the client at 8 o'clock. We'll take them both then, along with anyone else who shows up. But first, we need you to go home and act surprised when the police show up with the complaint." "The police are coming to my house?" "Standard procedure. She's requesting a restraining order based on the domestic violence allegations. They'll serve you with papers and probably ask some questions." I thought about coming home to find police cars in my driveway, neighbors watching from their windows, the whole carefully constructed facade of my normal life crumbling in public view. Will they arrest me? Not unless you give them a reason to. The allegations are serious enough to generate a restraining order, but not specific enough for immediate arrest. Just be calm, cooperative, and don't say anything that could be taken as threatening. And Talia? She won't be there. According to our surveillance, she's planning to stay at a hotel tonight. Wants to avoid any potential confrontation. Of course she did. File the complaint, let the police handle the messy part, then disappear until the dust settled. Probably with Aaron, celebrating the successful completion of their operation. I drove home in a strange state of calm. Everything was finally coming into the open. No more pretending, no more lies, no more careful performance of marital normalcy. Whatever happened next, at least it would be real. The police were already in my driveway when I arrived. 2 patrol cars and an unmarked sedan that probably belonged to a detective. Several neighbors were standing on their porches, trying to look casual, while obviously watching the drama unfold. Officer Martinez was professional, but serious. She explained that a complaint had been filed, that a temporary restraining order had been issued, and that I needed to avoid any contact with my wife until a hearing could be scheduled. Sir, I need to ask, do you own any weapons? I have a hunting rifle and a handgun, both legally registered and stored in a gun safe. I'm going to need you to surrender those temporarily, just as a precaution. I complied without argument, providing the weapons and the ammunition. The detective, who introduced himself as Kowalski, asked a few questions about my relationship with Talia, whether we'd been having problems, if I'd ever made any threats. We've been having some marital difficulties, I said carefully, but I've never threatened her or anyone else. This comes as a complete shock. Which was technically true. I'd known she was planning something, but the reality of police in my driveway, neighbors whispering, my life suddenly turned into a public spectacle. That part was still shocking. After they left, I sat in my empty house and tried to process what had just happened. 15 years of marriage ended with a false police report and a restraining order. My reputation in the neighborhood probably destroyed, my security clearance under review, my entire life upended by a woman who'd been systematically betraying me for months. My phone buzzed. A text from Mira. I just heard. I'm so sorry. This isn't what I wanted when I told you the truth. I called her back immediately. Mira, where are you? At home. Talia called me this afternoon, crying, saying you'd been threatening her and she had to file a police report. She wanted me to confirm that you'd been acting strange lately, asking suspicious questions. What did you tell her? I told her I needed to think about it. Silas, I know what we talked about, but seeing police cars at your house, knowing you might be in real trouble, I'm scared I made everything worse. You didn't make anything worse. You saved my life, probably literally. What do you mean? I couldn't tell her about the federal investigation, about the surveillance operation that was probably happening right now. I mean that knowing the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than living a lie. She's my sister. I know, and I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. There was a long pause. Silas, there's something else. After Talia called me today, I started thinking about some things she'd said over the past few months. Questions she asked about you, about your work, about your daily routine. At the time, I thought she was just trying to understand why your marriage was having problems. But now I think she was gathering information, like she was building a case against you. If only she knew how right she was. Mira, I need you to be very careful about what you say to Talia from now on. Don't tell her we've talked. Don't mention anything about helping me. Can you do that? You think she's dangerous? I thought about the messages Henderson had shown me, about the systematic way Talia had infiltrated my life, about the complaint she'd filed knowing it was false. I think she's not the person we thought she was. At 8:15 that evening, my phone rang. Henderson. It's done. We took Price and two others, including the client. Turns out it's a Chinese intelligence operation using corporate espionage as cover. Your wife was working for foreign agents. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just betrayal, not just adultery, but treason. My wife had been committing treason. Where is she? In custody. We picked her up at the hotel where she was waiting for Price. She's being processed now. What happens to me? The domestic violence complaint gets dismissed as part of a federal investigation into espionage. Your security clearance is safe, your record is clean. In fact, your cooperation with this investigation will probably be noted favorably in your file. I sat in my empty house, thinking about Talia in a federal holding cell, probably finally understanding that her operation had been compromised from the moment Mira showed me those text messages. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed our marriage for, had collapsed in a single evening. Henderson? Yeah? What was she getting out of it? Money? Some. But mostly they promised her a new identity, a new life. Told her she could disappear, start over somewhere else. Classic recruitment technique. Offer an escape from whatever problems they're running from. She wanted to escape from me. She wanted to escape from her life. You were just collateral damage. After Henderson hung up, I walked through my house one more time. Our house, though I supposed it was just mine now. The kitchen where she'd made dinner while planning my destruction. The bedroom where she'd slept beside me while stealing government secrets. The living room where we'd watched television and pretended everything was normal. Tomorrow, the neighbors would learn that the police cars hadn't been there because I was dangerous, but because my wife was a spy. The restraining order would be dismissed, the weapons returned, the whispered gossip replaced with a different kind of speculation. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was alone in my house with nothing to hide and no one to pretend for. The operation was over. The marriage was over. Whatever came next, at least it would be honest. I poured myself a drink and sat down to wait for whatever morning would bring. The next morning brought reporters. I woke up to the sound of car doors slamming and looked out my bedroom window to see 3 news vans parked on my street. Apparently, the arrest of a Chinese espionage ring operating in Cleveland was big enough news to warrant the full media circus. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Reporters, probably, trying to get the story of the betrayed husband whose wife turned out to be a spy. I'd ignored all of them, but I couldn't ignore the crowd gathering on my front lawn. Henderson called at 7:30. Don't talk to any reporters, don't confirm or deny anything. If they corner you, just say the matter is under federal investigation and refer them to the FBI press office. How long is this going to last? The media attention? A few days? Maybe a week? The legal proceedings? Months? Possibly years. Your wife is looking at serious federal charges. What kind of charges? Espionage, conspiracy, fraud, filing false police reports. If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison. I tried to process that. Talia, who'd worried about getting speeding tickets, was facing decades in prison for treason. The woman who'd shared my bed for 15 years had become someone I didn't recognize at all. There's something else, Henderson continued. Her lawyer wants to arrange a meeting. Says she has information about other operations, other couples who might be compromised. She's looking to make a deal. She wants to cooperate? She wants to save herself. There's a difference. I spent the morning hiding in my own house while reporters knocked on my door and neighbors gave interviews about how shocked they were, how normal we'd seemed, how they'd never suspected anything unusual. Mrs. Patterson from across the street told Channel 8 that Talia had always been very friendly, maybe too friendly, and that she'd noticed strange cars in our driveway at odd hours. None of it was true, of course, but truth wasn't really the point. The story was too good. Suburban housewife turns out to be a spy, betrays husband and country for foreign agents. It had everything: betrayal, espionage, adultery, and a sympathetic victim who'd been completely fooled by his own wife. Around noon, Mira showed up at my back door, avoiding the reporters camped out front. "I brought groceries," she said, carrying 2 bags into my kitchen. "Figured you might not want to go out for a while." "Thanks. How are you holding up?" She sat down at my kitchen table and put her head in her hands. "My sister is a spy, Silas. An actual spy. How does something like that happen?" "I don't think it happened overnight. I think she's been moving in that direction for a while, and we just didn't see it. The affairs, the lies, the way she used me to cover for her, that was all part of some espionage operation?" "According to the FBI, yes." Mira looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I helped her. Every time I covered for her, every time I lied for her, I was helping foreign agents steal government secrets." "You didn't know." "But I should have. I'm her sister. I should have seen that something was seriously wrong." I sat down across from her. "Mira, the FBI had her under surveillance for weeks before they figured out what was really going on. These people are professionals. They're trained to fool everyone, including family." "She wants to see me." That surprised me. "You've talked to her?" "Her lawyer called this morning. Said she's in federal custody, but she's allowed visitors. She specifically asked for me." "Are you going to go?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to understand how this happened, why she did it. But part of me never wants to see her again." I understood the conflict. Despite everything Talia had done to me, part of me still wanted answers. Not because I thought it would change anything, but because 15 years of marriage doesn't disappear overnight, even when it turns out to have been built on lies. "What would you ask her if you went?" Mira thought about it. Whether any of it was real, the sister relationship, the family dinners, the conversations we had about life and love and dreams, whether she actually cared about me at all, or if I was just useful cover for her operation. "Those are good questions. What about you? Do you want to see her?" I considered it. The woman who'd shared my life, my bed, my secrets, was sitting in a federal holding cell, probably trying to figure out how to minimize her prison sentence. The woman who'd planned to destroy my reputation and career to protect her espionage operation. The woman who'd turned our marriage into a weapon against my country. "No," I said. "I don't think I do." That afternoon, Henderson called with an update. "Your wife is cooperating. She's provided details about the entire operation, how she was recruited, how the intelligence was passed, who else was involved. It's bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" "At least a dozen couples across the country. Wives recruited to spy on husbands with security clearances. Husbands recruited to spy on wives with government jobs. It's been going on for years. And I never suspected anything. None of them did. That was the beauty of the operation from their perspective. Use existing relationships, existing trust, to gather intelligence. Much more effective than trying to place foreign agents in sensitive positions." "What happens now?" "Now we roll up the entire network. Your wife's cooperation is going to save lives and protect national security. It might also save her from spending the rest of her life in prison." "She gets a deal?" "Probably. Reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against the people who recruited her and ran the operation. She'll still do time, but not as much as she would have." After Henderson hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out how I felt about that. Part of me wanted Talia to face the full consequences of what she'd done, but another part of me, the part that had loved her for 15 years, was relieved that she might have a chance at some kind of life after prison. That evening, Mira called. I went to see her. "How was it?" "Horrible. She looked terrible. No makeup, prison clothes, her hair pulled back. But that wasn't the worst part." "What was the worst part?" "She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was sorry she got caught. Sorry the operation failed. Sorry she was facing prison. But she wasn't sorry for what she did to you, or to me, or to our country." "What did she say?" "She said she felt trapped in her life, trapped in her marriage, trapped in a small existence that was slowly suffocating her. She said the people who recruited her offered her a chance to be part of something important, something that mattered. And betraying her husband and country felt important to her? She said she never thought about it that way. She said she was just providing information, just helping people who needed it. She made it sound like charity work. I thought about the messages Henderson had shown me, the systematic way Talia had gathered intelligence, the careful planning that had gone into destroying my reputation when the operation was complete. That wasn't charity work. That was warfare. Did you get your answers? Some of them. She said she did love me, that our relationship was real. But she also said that love wasn't enough to stop her from doing what she thought was necessary. And what about our marriage? Did she say whether any of that was real? She said she loved you too, at least in the beginning, but somewhere along the way, she started to feel like she was disappearing into your life, your career, your dreams. She said the affair with Aaron wasn't about him, it was about feeling like herself again. Herself as a spy. Herself as someone who mattered. After Mira left, I walked through my house one more time. Tomorrow, the reporters would probably move on to other stories. The neighbors would stop staring. Life would start returning to something resembling normal. But normal would be different now. Normal would be living alone in a house that had been compromised by foreign agents. Normal would be knowing that the woman I'd trusted with everything had been systematically betraying me for months. Normal would be rebuilding a life that had been torn apart by someone I'd loved. As I got ready for bed, I thought about Talia in her federal holding cell, probably lying awake, thinking about the life she'd thrown away for an espionage operation that had failed. Tomorrow, she'd wake up facing decades in prison, her career destroyed, her family relationships shattered, her reputation ruined. She'd gotten exactly what she'd planned for me. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it didn't make me feel better. Revenge, even when it comes naturally through the consequences of someone else's actions, doesn't heal betrayal. It doesn't restore trust or rebuild love or make the pain go away. But it does provide a certain sense of closure. Tomorrow, I would start figuring out how to build a new life from the wreckage of the old one. Tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep peacefully in my own bed, with no lies to maintain and no secrets to hide. The operation was over. The marriage was over. Whatever came next, at least it would be honest. And sometimes, honesty is enough.